Hello, my name is Leslie Whitty. I am the Vice President of Communications and Outreach for the South Central Workforce Development Board. And joining me is our new President and CEO. Congratulations again to Mr. John Swords. And we're going to be covering January 2021, the Open Jobs Report, analysis, and review. Welcome, John.
Thank you, Leslie. Thank you for the kind words and introduction. It's good to be back. I think this is our 6th or 7th month in a row doing this. So, I think we've got a good thing going with this Open Jobs Report.
Absolutely. And just to let viewers know, we are mixing it up a bit. So this is a little bit of a new format. And I really like it. I think it gets the information across, and it's in bite-sized portions, so I'm all for it, and we'll see if viewers feel the same.
Yeah, new, more visual, shorter.
Yes, there you go. Well, we will dive right in, and I think this is very important to discuss, because some viewers may think, oh, an Open Jobs Report analysis and review, that has nothing to do with me. But that's not really the case. So how does this impact people who are watching?
Yeah, that's it. Thank you, Leslie. We started this Open Jobs Report because every month we heard the same thing. There's a big giant number that gets published every month in the 6, 7, or 8,000 range of how many open jobs there are out here. And we felt like it was important to okay, let's take that number and let's try to understand that number. Let's peel it back and dive into it. Because it is a big number, and we're acutely aware that a lot of employers are looking for help, and they need people, and we're not trying to discount that at all. But I think it's important to really understand what this big number is, peel it back, and provide that to the public. So this report it's for employers, it's for job seekers, it's for educators, it's for community leaders, anybody that has an interest or some type of involvement in workforce and workforce development. This report is for you.
And to me, this definitely goes all the way down to the job seeker, because if a job seeker hears, oh, there are 6,000, there are 7,000 open jobs in South Central Kentucky, yet they cannot find a job that suits their, that matches their skill set, their education, then that's extremely frustrating. Oh, there's all these jobs, but you can't find a job. And I think that going through these numbers, it will help people like that make more sense of what these numbers really mean. So it should be pretty enlightening for all audiences.
Yeah, what do the numbers mean, and where are the opportunities? And
yes,
we're not going to get into all that today, because this is really kind of a short, kind of high level view of what we're going to look at. But our full report is going to have that level of detail.
Exactly. All right. So we've talked about how this impacts everyone, and we'll start with the very big picture.
Yeah. So what we do at the South Central Workforce Development Board is we have responsibility for 10 counties, and so we look at those 10 counties and really zoom in on that and try to not capture any data from outside the 10 counties. So when we look at our 10 counties, we're talking about 130,500 jobs in the region. That's both filled jobs and unfilled jobs.
Oh, that's a lot of jobs.
It's a lot of jobs.
Yes. So 130,500. So that's big. These are jobs that are filled. These are jobs that are unfilled. So right. Total number of jobs, period. All right. So everybody remember that number, 130,500.
Yeah, and then we break that down. And in this report, and the full report really focuses in on 6 major industry clusters or sectors. And so when you look here on the left, we group retail, hospitality, and food together because they're very interrelated. When you group those or cluster those 3 together, you're looking at 28,000 jobs in the region. Next, manufacturing is a single sector, has 26,200 jobs. Next, after that is healthcare and social assistance. We're looking at 16,500 jobs. Professional services cluster, which is that's a cluster that includes many different professions, and we get into the definition of that in the full report. But you're looking at over 8,600 jobs. Then construction at almost 7,200, and then transportation, distribution, logistics at 4,360. Everything else, all the other industry sectors make up nearly 40,000 jobs. You can kind of see a bar graph on what that represents to the right. I will say this, if we were talking percentages, retail, hospitality, food makes up 22% of our economy. Manufacturing makes up 19.9% of our economy, almost 20%. And an interesting data point here is that the U.S. average for manufacturing is 8.2%. We're at almost 20%. So you have over 11 points higher. We got a lot of eggs in the manufacturing basket. It is the strength of our economy. Healthcare is 12.5% of our economy. Professional services is 9.4%. Construction 5.4%, and transportation, distribution, logistics is 3.2%.
Okay, and just to clarify, in case anyone watching is wondering, where does this data come from? Where are we getting this data?
I'll tell you what, yeah. So, I mean, I was going to speak to this on the next slide, but I can do it here. So our data comes from a platform called JobsEQ. JobsEQ is a nationally recognized platform that's used by industry associations. It's used by economic development authorities. It's used by workforce boards across the nation. So what they do, it was founded by a statistician, but JobsEQ kind of can pull census data, it can pull Bureau of Labor Statistics data, and then for the open jobs that we're going to get into and talk about today, it's going to pull or scrape data from Indeed, from Monster, from all the job boards that are out there. It'll scrape from those, and then it's got an algorithm where it tries to, let's say the same job is posted in Monster and Indeed, the algorithm will it won't count it as 2, it'll reduce it down to 1 because it'll recognize it's the same job being posted in 2 different locations. So it'll run an algorithm to kind of call that number down to what it thinks is the true number, and it does a pretty good job of that.
And one thing I know we've mentioned in the past, this is a very good source of information. It may not be 100% on the nose every single time, because I'm just looking at construction. A lot of times in the field of construction, they may not advertise jobs on Indeed or Monster. So again, that's just something that I think people should know. That's that it's not 100%, but this is a very solid source of information that we're pulling from.
It is. Leslie, if you go forward a slide, I'm going to expand on that a second.
Wait, go to the next one.
Yes, if you don't mind.
Okay. Yep.
But no, you're exactly right. I mean, so the more you get into these numbers, the messier it becomes, right? So, and what we're trying to do is, and what everybody tries to do is you try to take these numbers and distill it down to what you think is true, and you clean up some of the mess. So there's a distinction between advertised jobs and open jobs. So we call this an open jobs report, but really what we're doing is looking at advertised jobs. Advertised jobs is kind of that is really the only way you can kind of figure out, it's the best indicator of what jobs are open out there.
Right.
But it's important to distinguish between open jobs and advertised jobs, because one advertised job might not equal one open job. It could be one advertisement posting for 3 positions.
Hmm.
We don't know. I mean, there's nothing that tells you that. I mean, but you have to recognize that could be what's going on. So it's not always one-to-one. We know that oftentimes, high level management, executive level positions may not get posted on traditional job boards. Those might get routed through through some kind of recruitment agency that handles that. As you mentioned, construction jobs. We know we've been doing this for a while, and we picked up on this trend right away. Most of our construction companies are small business men and women, and they're not running expensive advertisements on Indeed looking for somebody to carry shingles up and down a ladder. I mean, that's just not really what's going on. And so, when we look at the construction report in detail, it seems artificially low. We know it's artificially low, but this is the best we have. I mean,
Right.
anything once as soon as you get away from advertised jobs, it becomes kind of speculation at that point. So it's messy, it's not perfect, but it is the way that you do this. And so we're going to look at advertised jobs, talk about them, but understand that the more you dig into this, the messier it gets.
Right. And so just to go back, at the very beginning, we mentioned there were 130,500 filled and unfilled positions in the region. And so now we're looking at, out of all those, we have 6,791 advertised jobs.
In the month of January, that was the number.
Yes.
And
yes. And so next we'll be starting to look at, okay, what types of jobs were advertised.
Yeah, we're going to peel this back a little bit. This is where it gets interesting.
All right, you ready for the next one?
Yes, let's do it.
Right.
Yeah, so out of this big number, this hand-wringing number of 6,791 jobs, 15% were outside the region. What does that mean? It means that although Jobs EQ does a good job of trying to call out these kinds of things, it doesn't do it perfectly. And so we sit down and we kind of go through this manually and look at it. And it's very consistent, consistently it's right at 15%. And what does it mean? It means we're talking about things like in the month of January, there were 335 advertisements for over-the-road truck driving jobs. And these advertisements were made by companies that don't reside here. They don't have any physical presence in South Central Kentucky, but they're running advertisements inside of our zip codes. Are they jobs for our job seekers? Yes. But, I call them outside the region because they're not here. There were over 100 job postings by the U.S. Army looking to fill active duty positions, right, where they want to recruit, send somebody through training, and then send them somewhere else in the country or in the world as a posting. There were 28 job postings for traveling nurses. So this is pretty common. We also get a lot of advertisements coming in from right on the edge of our border, particularly out of Litchfield, Cromwell, Beaver Dam, Campbellsville. They're technically outside of our region, but they're running a lot of advertisements in our region. And Jobs EQ does a good job of not letting the Tennessee jobs kind of penetrate in, but those ones on our edges do penetrate in, and it kind of drives up this number.
Now, so. I will be the first person to say that I am not a mathematician, but 6,791, you take approximately 1,000 of those jobs that are not in our region, we're down to about 5,700 that are in our region. Again, a job seeker could apply for one of these, but technically it is not physically located in our region. It may be, and I was surprised to learn a lot of these are out of state, especially if it's CDL connected.
Yeah, CDL and the traveling nurses. I mean, that's kind of an industry practice for hospitals are so desperate for RNs is that there's a lot of traveling nurse agencies that are out there, and they run advertisements in every zip code in the country.
Right. All right.
And this last month of January, 28 advertisements. That's actually the lowest number I've seen in 6 months. It's usually a much higher level for traveling nurses.
All right. So we'll go. So we've got a little over 1,000. We're outside of the region.
Mm-hmm.
So
here's an interesting one too. So 27% were part-time positions, and this is very consistent. It's been 27% every single month for the last 6 months. That's that number, that percentage has not really fluctuated at all. So I think it's an interesting data point. I mean, so if we're left to our own imagination on what these 6,791 can be, I think every person would kind of have a different kind of picture in their head on what that means. Are these high-tech jobs? Are they high-paying jobs? You might assume that they're full-time jobs with benefits and all of that, but every month we find 27% are for part-time jobs, and there's a need for part-time jobs. I mean, there's a need. Employers need it. There's job seekers that need part-time work. So I mean, I'm not trying to, make sound like part-time jobs are not important, but I think it's important to recognize that, a little over a quarter are part-time jobs.
right, and then that's extremely important, because if that's not necessarily specified in the advertisement, then that could lead a job seeker down a rabbit hole that they don't want to go down, because they need a full-time job. So the fact that 27% of these were part-time, that to me is extremely significant.
Yeah, I mean, they were listed as part-time. I mean, that's how Jobs EQ. I mean, if they were listed as part-time, then Jobs EQ captures it like that. So you're right. I mean, but we've talked about this in previous Open Jobs Report filmings. Sometimes there's a lot that's unsaid or unwritten in a job advertisement. We'll talk about this in a minute. I mean, education requirements. 58% of all job postings don't list any education requirements at all, even though there's probably a requirement, but it's just not being articulated in the job posting. Well, I mean, that's not the only, there's a lot of job postings that are pretty vague.
Right.
So this number could be bigger or smaller. I mean,
right. And some of that I know may be due to, you're trying to keep down to a certain number of words. You're trying to, just get the most important details, but it does lead to some confusion and ambiguity if everything is not spelled out in the advertisement.
Yeah, I mean, it certainly can. It can.
All right. So the next one.
Yeah, and this has been a consistent percentage too. What we found month to month is that right at 58% of all the job postings have an average wage that is at or below $15 an hour. I'm not saying that's good. I'm not saying that's bad, but that's what the numbers tell us, is that almost 60% of our jobs are at or below $15 an hour. And, I think there's implications there in terms of living wage. I think there's implications there in terms of, maybe motivating people to get back into the workforce, or not motivating them to get back in the workforce. I mean, it's not for me to say. I mean, I can't put my finger on it directly, but that number of 58% at or below $15 an hour has been very consistent. I will say this: I have a feeling, I think this number is going to start to. What I'm seeing is wage pressure starting to, there's some wage pressure with companies that are coming in, paying higher wages. We're already seeing, fast food restaurants paying $12, $13 an hour starting pay. So there is some upward pressure that we've been seeing. So I do think that this percentage will start to shift and change in the near future, because, all of our employers, have vacancies, and there's some upward wage pressure going on to try to attract talent.
And on this slide, I think it's important to point out that there may be some overlap with the part-time positions.
Yes.
We just talked about part-time, so a lot of these may be part-time, but as a whole, that's a huge percentage that is below $15 an hour.
Yeah.
Out of that 6,700.
Yes, ma'am, it is. But it's always every month. It's 58%. Whatever the total job advertisements are, it's 58% of them are going to be at or below $15 an hour.
I remember my first job. I was 15, and minimum wage at that time was $3.35. And I thought I was uptown. Working.
Leslie, we're from the same era.
Yes, it was $3.35. So
yeah.
All right, moving on. I don't want to reveal any more of my age than I just did. So we'll move on. We'll move on to the next slide.
Yeah. So just what we provide here is median wage for all occupations. So just as a quick refresher, we're not talking average, we're talking median. Median means if you took every wage right from the lowest wage to the highest wage, and you listed them all out, and you put your finger right smack dab in the middle, that's your median. And so median wage in South Central Kentucky is $33,600 a year, or $16.60 hourly.
All right.
All right, kind of moving on. I just alluded to this a minute ago. So when we look at that 6791 total advertised jobs, 30% listed high school diploma or GED as a requirement.
Mm-hmm.
And that percentage fluctuates within 1 or 2 points every month, but it usually is right around 30% list high school diploma or GED. Leslie, if you go to the next slide, we'll kind of break out, the post-secondary piece of that. So 3%. It's always 2 to 3% require, state requirement for an associate's degree. Bachelor's degree is in the 6 to 7% range. In January, it was 7%, and master's degree is always kind of 2 to 3%. If you add up high school, associates, bachelors, and masters, that's a total of 42% of job postings list an education requirement.
Mm-hmm.
58% don't list any requirement whatsoever. It's kind of left to the imagination. So, what we say is, as at least from a workforce development board, we would like to see education requirements listed a little bit better, because in our line of work, we want to help create talent pipelines to fill employer needs. And, one of the ways that employers can indicate need is by listing, being detailed in their job advertisements and job descriptions. And so, that's their choice whether to list it or not. But, we would ask that employers, include those educational requirements if they can, just because I think it'll be helpful to the job seeker, and it'll be helpful to us.
Well, and honestly, I think it would be helpful to the employer too. If no education requirement is listed, and you get tons of applications that don't meet the education requirement that is there but wasn't listed in the occupation, that's wasting the employer's time and the job seeker's time. So yes, I agree. The more employers can specify, the better. The more it helps everyone across the board.
Yes, ma'am, I agree. All right, just a quick look at unemployment rates. What we provide here is kind of what on the left is South Central Kentucky current unemployment rate. versus what the year prior, and then as a point of comparison, how does that compare to the U.S.? So you can see South Central Kentucky in December. That's the most recent unemployment data we've got. We were seeing a 5.4% unemployment rate, and you can see how that compared to the year prior. You can also see how that December 2020 5.4% compares to the United States average in December 2020. So we're slightly better than the U.S. average in terms of unemployment. We're obviously not back to the 2019 numbers, but we're trending there. I would say we have stayed in the kind of 5 to 5.5% range unemployment rate since October. We've kind of been hovering just over 5%. October, November, December. We haven't seen it break under 5% yet.
And so, to me, in the wake of a pandemic, the fact that we are at 5.4% is a good thing, especially looking at what's happening across the United States.
Yeah. I mean, we're blessed. We're certainly doing better than many parts of the country. And on the one hand, on the other hand, I think an employer watching this might not care because they just need help, right? They need people. So, right. But those are the numbers as of December.
Okay. So right. Key takeaways out of all this information. We have given tons of numbers and percentages and all sorts of information. What do you think are the most important takeaways for viewers?
Yeah, so I just touched on one of them, kind of where the unemployment rate has been, over the last 3 months, and I think that's an important takeaway. I kind of up front, I mentioned that we saw a pretty sizable uptick in the number of job postings from December to January. 640 additional job postings in that 1 month period. So we saw that's a pretty good uptick. If you've been following us, we saw a decline between October and December. We saw about, the number of job postings declined a little over 1,000 from October to December, and then they just jumped back up 600, over 600 in January. So, what does that? What does that tell us? It tells us that, that our economy remains strong. Obviously, with over 6,000, almost 6,800 job postings, our economy is still strong. Despite some of the messiness we talked about, despite part-time, despite hourly wage, we still have a very strong economy. We still have a giant need to fill positions in our region. I think, we'll see what the month of February holds, and if these numbers hold steady, and if the number of job postings increases again. But we certainly have a strong economy. And I'm just going to, before we get into the next slide, I want to tease a little bit more information. We've stayed very high level. We've kind of tried to keep this short, quick, to the point. But there's a lot more data out there in our full report. And our next slide will kind of tell you how to get there to look at the full report if you're watching. But let me just throw some additional teaser numbers out there. In January, 23% of all the job advertisements were for retail, hospitality, and food. Manufacturing accounted for 8% of all job advertisements, which is an interesting number to me because manufacturing makes up 20% of our economy, but only 8% of the job advertisements. Mm-hmm. So what does that mean? Transportation, distribution, and logistics makes up 3.2% of our economy, but accounted for 17% of all job advertisements. Right, so it's kind of the opposite of manufacturing. It's way overrepresented in advertisements compared to its actual size in our economy.
Right, but if I remember correctly, a lot of those jobs may be coming from other regions.
That's right. So we get into that. So our full report, I mean, we go sector by sector and we dive into percentages and trends, and we get into wage data, and we look at, well, who's doing the job posting and what are the top job advertisements, what positions are being advertised the most. So we really kind of get into that level of detail, kind of sector by sector for these big 6 sectors that we refer to up front. So Leslie, if you want to go to the next slide, and I'll kind of turn this over to you, but if this information interests you, if you think it has utility, we would encourage you to, take a look at the full report. And I will also say that if there's something not on this report, if there's data that you need, please reach out to us, because we will do our best to dig up the data that you need.
And that's one of the functions of the board. We have these numbers, but I believe that as a board, it's our duty to go through and really analyze what these numbers are, where they're coming from, what is the story behind the number, because you can gain tremendous insight. Again, whether you're an employer or a job seeker, there's a whole lot to be learned from this. And I think this format today, I think it will enable anyone to go to the full report. And let me tell you guys, these slides are crazy detailed. But what we've done is we've broken down one slide into individual points just in this episode. And when you go to the actual, analysis report slides, you will see all this information on one page. So I think that doing this format will help people not be overwhelmed when they see a page of numbers. And it's very easy to get the full report. The first step is to go to the board's website. That is southcentralworkforce.com. And you click the webinars and web series tabs, and the open jobs report analysis and review will come up first. And you just click and sign up for the webinar. And I will tell you, that does not put you on any sort of email list. We do not release that information. No one's going to call you about a car warranty or anything like that. But that way we just know who has accessed this information. It's completely free. But if you sign up for the webinar, it's this exact recording, but all you do is click the handouts tab, and you've got all the slides. You've got, every sector. So it's incredibly insightful.
All right. Thank you, Leslie. I mean, we're really proud of this report. I mean, we think it's useful. I mean, it's for everybody, and it certainly helps us.
And John is frozen, but I know he's saying very nice things about the Open Jobs Report analysis and review. So with that, I will conclude today's episode. I will encourage you to go to our website, southcentralworkforce.com, click the webinars tab, and access this information. I think you'll find it extremely helpful. If you have any questions, comments, or concerns, click the contact button on our website, and we will be extremely happy to help you get further information. Thanks for joining us. Have a good rest of your day.